For Children's Church, at the discretion of the parents, of course. Join me, if you have your Bibles, to Deuteronomy chapter 32. Isaiah 41 says that God gives power to the faint, and to them that have no strength, he increases strength. Even your young men shall grow weary, and your old men shall faint. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Often on Mother's Day, pastors choose the text in Proverbs 31. And if you take a look at the bulletin later, you'll see that many people, many women, many mothers are intimidated by Supermom in Proverbs 31. But it is actually a poem. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. From verse 10 to verse 31, each of those characteristics describe a different aspect of motherhood. I want to point out just two. It opens with who can find a virtuous woman. And words mean different things, of course, in different cultures and in different language. Though virtuous in the Bible certainly implies chaste and modest, that's not what the word means. It literally is high. It literally means a force. Mothers are a force to be reckoned with. 56 times, to give you an idea of God's concept of force, 56 times in the Bible, the same word is translated army. 37 times it's translated valor. 32 times it's translated either strength, power, or might. 29 times it's translated host. What does host mean in a biblical reference? Like an army. The idea, have you ever heard the phrase, Mom has eyes in the back of her head? Because she has partners. The Holy Spirit, among others. 14 times it's translated forces. 21 times this same word is translated wealth. A virtuous woman is a woman of strength. In fact, in the same poem a few verses later, it says, strength and honor are her clothing. My question is, where does that strength come from? And what happens when we run out? And that's the verse I just quoted. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings as eagles. Deuteronomy chapter 32 gives us an insight as to why God used the phrase eagles when describing those that learn to wait or partner with the Lord. Pick up reading with me in Deuteronomy 32. Let's start in verse 9. The Lord's portion is his people. He found him. That would be, in this context, the interpretation is obviously Old Testament Israel, but the New Testament says that we're God's people by faith in Christ. He found him, that would be Israel, in a desert land, in a waste howling wilderness, that would be Egypt. And he carried him about, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. As the eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings, so the Lord did lead him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. He made him to suck honey out of the rock, and oil out of the flint, butter of kine, milk of sheep, fat of lambs. Look at verse 15. But Jeshurun, another word for Israel, waxed fat and kicked. As the eagle, God says, if you'll wait on me, you'll be like eagles. And God says, as the eagle stirred up her nest, flutters over her young, spreads abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. Now, obviously, God is talking about the female eagle, the mother eagle here. And God says, that's how I raise my children. And God partners, or at least desires to partner in a very unique way with the moms in our lives to accomplish this. See, God, in the context of the passage we read, children of Israel are in bondage, and God renews them through the Passover and the blood of the Passover lamb, frees them from the Egyptian bondage, takes them through the wilderness, and God says, in that process, like a mother eagle prepares her young for flight and for survival, I do the same thing. Deuteronomy reminds us that God intentionally grows us in much the same way as the mother eagle prepares her young. But the first thing he says he stirs up the nest. Why does God do that to us? And what does that look like? Well, we need to understand that nests are placed for preparation, not destination. We're not made for the nest. We're born in the nest, but there's a whole wide world out there that God is trying to prepare us for. So how does God transition baby eagles, baby people, to get out of the nest and to face with a level of confidence and conviction and clarity their destiny? The eagle's nests are incredibly huge. They're built with great care and effort. They're up to, I actually read this morning, they found some up to 6 feet wide. You know how large an adult eagle's wingspan is? Anyone know? 6 foot. So you got a mom eagle, a dad eagle, and up to 3 young eagles that will grow to their wingspan almost full height within 6 to 8 weeks. So it's got to be big. It's comfortable. It's built out of brambles and sticks and whatnot and mud, but it's always lined with feathers or the fleeces or the skins of animals to make it comfortable for the babies when they're born. And it's usually very high in the air, at least 75 feet or up on the crag of a rock. So it's in a dangerous place from the perspective of the eagles, but it's built that way to protect them from predators. God stirs up our nest because we want to be comfortable. And there are seasons of comfort, seasons of nurturing, seasons of preparation, but the preparation is for flight. Moms, have you ever heard the phrase, that nesting instinct? Where does that come from? Moms have an incredible nesting instinct. They're natural nurturers or comforters. Titus chapter 2 describes them as keepers at home, literally domestically or nurturing, domestically inclined, literally guardians of the nest. That's what the word actually means. This nesting instinct, often before a baby is born, mom gets a spurt of energy and starts making sure the nursery's ready and everything's ready. I like this cartoon. You may not be able to see it, so I'm going to read it to you. Apparently, my nesting instinct was replaced by my much stronger sit around and eat ice cream till I feel like puking instinct. But there is a nesting instinct that God is woven into the fabric of the mothers. God says, like she, the mother eagle, stirs up her nest, God uses moms to stir up the nest at the right time and in the right ways by, first of all, what does the eagle do? She takes all the comfortable things out of the nest. The leaves, the dried grass, the soft bunny rabbit furs. Exposing the hard sticks and thorns and brambles that are underlying that comfortable part. The word stirreth in the Hebrew is a very interesting word. It's It means wake up. Open your eyes. Moms, have you ever found yourself trying to wake your kids up? I don't mean just physically. I mean, it's time to wake up. Let me put that a different way. It's time to grow up. Life's about to change. Cheney had their high school graduation last night. Other schools will have it, or either have had it or will have it in the next week or so. And, for the graduating young people, it's time to grow up. If you haven't learned to fly, you're about to get booted and learn the hard way. So God uses mom to periodically remind her growing brood, you can't live like this forever. It's time to wake up and get serious about what you're about to face. So God uses them to they stir it up by removing the comfortable lining and by motivating responsible independence. As the mother eagle stirs up her nest and fluttereth over her young. I love the Hebrew language. I don't know a lot of it. I took a course, and it was all Hebrew to me. But it is incredibly descriptive language. What do we think of when we think of fluttering? Just fluttering. But there's a purpose in what the mother eagle is doing, and the word literally means to shake. You know, if you can't wake up your child physically, what are you prone to do? Shake up your child. It's time not just to wake up, you got to get moving. You've got to get ready for the day or for the life. It is easy to grow apathetic in the comfort of the nest. We have this ritual I won't even explain to you that happens almost every morning at my house when it comes to waking and shaking my children to get up. And every mother understands, unless they were just blessed with a very diligent, energetic child, that often if they had their way on a Monday morning, where would they be? Stay in bed. Moving a child, so this idea of fluttering means shaking things up, rattling their cage, shaking their nest, taking that which was once a symbol of comfort and making it a symbol of a little bit of conflict to motivate them to begin the process of moving independently. But moving a child from absolute complete dependence to independent flight is a painful journey. Painful for who? How about the young person? I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. You remember that? It's painful for the child, but I believe, and I'm not a mom, I'm a dad, and I feel a pain about it. So I know my wife does. Have you ever heard this is going to hurt me a lot more than it's going to hurt you? You don't, and you won't understand that until you're in that position. It is painful for both. You may not be able to see this, but I'm going to read it for you. A note that a teenager put up on the refrigerator. I'm a self-entitled teenager with no respect for authority. Maybe mom put this, but this was the attitude. I'm also super smart. I have 3 D's because I don't care. What is that about? That's about I don't need you. But the very attitude that says I don't need you is screaming, I am desperately afraid. And I need help. Why does God stir up our nest? And why do moms partnering with God stir up our nest? Because they're trying to move us out of a comfort zone. Because there's danger in staying in the nest too long. Also, to remind us of our own inadequacy. There's some unique things about eagles. And I don't think they're that unique. I think the timing may be a little unique, but the process is universal in all of God's creatures. In the nest, everything is provided for the young eagle. Everything. They have no capacity for the first part of their life to hunt their own food, to fly, to get out of the nest. The nest is their world. That's all they know. Little eagles don't go to school. They don't hang out with other rebellious little eagles. The nest is all they know. And in that nest, everything is provided for. And a lesson can be learned, and often is never unlearned, and that's you owe me. You owe me. May I say, we have a country that is filled with eagles that haven't grown up yet. The reality, though, is mama is not going to be there forever. And there's a real tricky dynamic that takes place because mama's world for a while is focused on those children and she's needed. But mama's job is to work herself out of a job. So if she's doing her job right, she's going to be less and less needed. And there's a lot of women who don't like that transition. So they sabotage that process by constantly even following their little eagles and taking care of them. That is not God's design. A wise mama and a wise mama eagle will realize I'm not going to be here forever. There are 1,000 stories I can tell you after 30 years of ministry that I've watched where little eagles were ready to fly, but they weren't ready to fly. Some of it was certainly their responsibility, but some of it was mama didn't want to let them go, so mama didn't prepare them for the inevitabilities of going on. Do you know, mama eagles usually lay 3 eggs. You want to guess at the survival rate of eagles? 1 in 8 will survive. 1 in 8. I suspect that the survival rate, spiritually speaking, of people who were raised in church is probably less than that. And somewhere in our hearts, those of us that are adults or parents or grandparents, we can look at the dangers in this world, and they may be different than the dangers that eagles face, but they are nevertheless very real. And we realize we have a relatively short season in which to prepare our children to face those dangers. Now, the problem with eagles is the problem with people. We grow, and our bodies outgrow our brains. Young eagles gain a pound every 5 days. By the time that they are 6 weeks old, they are almost full grown. Their wings are developed by 8 weeks, and they're feeling pretty kind of a big deal. All grown up. But the problem is their bodies have outgrown their brains. You've heard me say this before, and it is a medical fact. The part of the human brain that processes consequences is not completely developed until the mid to late 20s. So just as it's true of humans, if they don't learn from the wisdom of people who have their brains developed and they've had experience, they don't have all the equipment to make wise choices. At this stage of their life, parents start dropping live food. I'm not going to gross you out with the details, but the parents don't kill and digest the food at this point. They pick up the little whatever, and they plop it in the nest. And what do the baby eagles learn to do? Come on. This is a PG sermon. They learn to kill. They learn to feed themselves, but this is still in the nest. Soon, this food just magically appears. They don't notice mom anymore. They're so focused on the food, it just happens. And that's the only world they know, by the way. They feel they don't need mom, but the problem is they're still in the nest. Well, so what does mom begin to do? When the food comes, the kids start lashing out at mom. That's mine. And they start, remember I read God talking about his people, but Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. Have you ever heard the phrase, don't bite the hand that's feeding you? Well, this is a process in nature, and it's a process in your home and mine to some degree. So the parents progressively, and hear me carefully, intentionally bring less and less food. So how do the young eagles react to that? Not well. See this little eagle yelling at his mama? What's for dinner? It's like the mom who was sick, and she was in bed with the flu, and one of the helpful teenagers came up and said, Mom, are you okay? No, honey, I don't feel good. Okay, Mom, I'll get my brother and we'll carry you to the kitchen. or a little girl with her father going through wedding pictures and said, who's that lady? He says, well, that's your mom. He said, is that when she came to work for us? So during this process, what has been provided at no cost and no strings and no limitations is now there's a few challenges, and the eagles resent this. And frankly, in this context of our own inadequacy, a mark of immaturity is overconfidence. where we think we can handle everything. And the world and nature has a way of reminding us the truth of what Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. It is often through failure that we're humbled, and it's through humility that we ultimately find success. God says, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's Peter 5:6. Verse 7 says, therefore humble yourselves before the Lord that he may lift you up. Does anyone know what 1 Peter 5:8 says? Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion. Now, if verse 6 is about the importance of humility, and verse 7 says, so we need to learn to humble ourselves, and verse 8 says, because if we don't, our adversary, how was the devil created? I mean, what made him the devil? Pride and arrogance. So the mother eagle deals with this, and every mom has to deal with this. And we call this often the turbulent teen years, and they take a terrible toll. Both mom, and by the way, dad too, but this is Mother's Day, so dad, you're going to sit this one out. Mom and God know that there's danger in staying in the nest too long. So that would be the parents, are willing to pay the toll. I don't know if you have ever heard from one of your teenager that you weren't giving him or her exactly what they wanted when they wanted, and they copped an attitude and they shouted hateful things back to you. Any witnesses about that? I've been there. I know. I hate to break your bubble. My kids are not perfect. You heard it here first. And you know, when I hear those words, the same thing goes through my mind and sometimes slips out my mouth. I love you enough for you to hate me. I love you enough for you to resent me right now. Because I know if I just keep fluffing your nest and making things always easy for you, you'll never be ready when it's time to leave the nest. So the parents are willing to pay the toll. Let me tell you about another bird. The wood duck is always born up in the hollow of a tree, up in the air. Not too high, but sometimes 20, 30 feet high. At 1 day old, the mother leaves the nest, gets down on the ground, and starts calling to the wood ducks. And this is an example of them jumping out of the nest, sometimes up to 30 feet in the air, jumping out of the tree. Now, put yourself here. Wood ducks, baby wood ducks, are very vulnerable, right, to predators. So as soon as this process happens, there's only a window of time when the mother duck starts calling her young before the predators are going to know what's going on. Do the little 1 day old ducks understand that? They do not. So the little ducks have a decision. This is comfortable. This is all I've known for all of 24 hours. But mama's down there. And that's a long way down. And they have to decide, are they going to trust mama enough to jump down? Why? Because wood ducks are made for the water. And it is imperative that the mom get the wood ducks out of the tree into the pond before the predators show up. God says this about his people: arise ye and depart, this is not your rest. It is polluted. It will destroy you with the sword destruction. Now, I know God is talking about the people of Israel and their idolatry and the situation they were in, but you can apply this truth to the comfort of the nest is not what you're made for. And if you don't learn to face the realities of life, if you haven't learned the lessons of integrity and character and diligence and work ethic, it will destroy you in this world. The word destruction is hebel. It literally means a cord or a noose or ruin. The idea is the luxuries of life, if you take them for granted and if you expect that you are due them, they will become a noose that will tie you up and keep you from, in my context, learning to fly. So why does God stir up our nest, move us from our comfort zones, remind us of our own inadequacy, and finally, it's all about flight. It's all about the ability to successfully face the challenges that are out there. They that wait upon the Lord shall mount up with wings as eagles. So let's talk about how a mother eagle prepares these little eagles who all they've known is someone else takes care of them. First of all, I told you mom started a couple of weeks earlier dropping food in, and they kill it themselves and fight over it and eat it and feel pretty proud of themselves. Well, mom stops doing that. Instead of dropping it, she flutters right over the nest and dangles the food in front of them. Literally. Now, what do these eagles do? They start jumping up. So she goes a little higher. And what do they have to do? They have to learn to use their wings, to develop those muscles. And what are they thinking while this is going on? What's that? I'm hungry. What are they thinking about mom? Oh, thank you. Like the Marine. Thank you, sir. May I have another? What are they thinking about mom at this stage? Are they happy with her? Do they resent her? Mom stops dropping food and holds it just out of their reach, forcing them to make a little effort. Now, what the babies can't possibly know is they've been eating and gaining a pound every 5 days. So those babies are what? They're fat. I'll just say it. There's very little room for exercise in the nest. And before they can take off, they've got to convert some of that baby fat into some muscle. So they got to get lean. And this is the stage in their training where, because mom's not providing everything and they have to do a little work to get it for themselves, that they start to lean up and lose some of that baby fat. The reality is what this little eagle and what this teenager thinks is cruelty is actually love. It is actually preparing them for flight. Eventually, she stops bringing food altogether. After a while, the baby eagles get hungry, and mom kind of disappears. Now, is mom gone? Where's mom? She's close by watching. But she's not taking care of the kids anymore. And the eagles have to make this decision. Now remember, these nests are built usually 75 foot in the air or higher. And they go over to the edge, and eventually their hunger drives them to jump. Now if mom has done her job well and taken the scorn of her kids sometimes, they have the physical capacity for flight. God made them that way. But if mom has not done the job well, or the kids have simply refused, they're going to starve in the nest. He stands there, or she, the little eagles, stand there, and they open their wings, and they jump. Do you think that's always a great, graceful landing? What are they looking for? Food. How have they found food before? Mom and dad have dropped it in the nest for them. So they're thinking, I'm hungry, I'm going to go shopping. Do you suppose there's a little bunny rabbit that says, here I am? A little fish that flops up on the shore for them? No. How successful are they on that first flight? Is the landing sometimes kind of rough? It's interesting where the verse in Deuteronomy says, taketh them on her wings. The mom is watching, and if it looks like it's going to be a terrible crash, she catches them. Or the dad does. They're watching. Now this little one gets, and they're not little, by the way. Their wings are almost 6 foot long by now. They're almost full grown. Now they land, and what are they looking for? Where's the beef? Where's the food? And they jump around a little bit, but what can't they do? What have they not been taught to do yet? They don't know how to fly to take off. They've never been on the ground. So they usually fail to find food, and mom and dad are watching from a distance, and they don't know what to do next. They've already jumped out. Here's the point. At this stage, they have a new appreciation for mom and dad. a new dependency. They realize, I'm hungry, I've never been here before, and I don't know what to do next. And they start squawking. And mom and dad are there. They will either give them progressively some food or take them to the river and show them how to hunt, they show them how to fly, how to take off. Now here's the point. As the mother eagle stirs up her nest, flutters over her young, takes them and carries them on their wings, bears them up, so the Lord leads us. You may not be a mom here, but you had a mom. You may not have a mom. You may have been an orphan, but you have a God. And this is what God does to all of his children. Is God stirring up your nests? You may not be a teenager at home, and I'm speaking allegorically, because life is full of nests, places where we work hard, we get here, we get comfortable. And we think this is where we're going to be for the rest of our lives. And then God starts stirring up our nest because he has somewhere else. He has something else, another challenge he's preparing us for. God moves us from our comfort zones by often making them less comfortable. Is God stirring up your nest because he's trying to remind you of your need for him and others? Is it possible that in our success that we, like Israel, we start getting fat and we start kicking back? And we start resenting what God and the people God brings into our lives do to try to make us a little lean, to try to give us strength to fly, reminding us of our inadequacy? Is God trying to teach us to fly? By way of observation, put yourself in the mind of that little, not so little physically, but that young eagle, and these times of transition, which are times of training. And from the eagle's perspective, they're very uncomfortable times. Many of such times in our lives, even as adults, they really might be nothing more than God strengthening new muscles. My riding mower, I've got several acres, and my riding mower, I think I put some bad gas in it yesterday, and it just got about 50 feet and died. And I tried my best to get that thing started. And then I made a terrible decision. I grabbed the push mower. I mowed about, I don't know, half an acre, maybe an acre, before I decided I'm going to get that riding mower going at any cost. This morning I woke up with a terribly sore back, and it was just simply a reminder. I had grown kind of lazy on the riding mower. Now I'm going back to the push mower, and I'm using muscles I haven't had to use for a while. Can you associate with that? There are spiritual muscles as well. Things like forgiveness, kindness, long suffering, gentleness, patience, meekness, love. These are things that don't come naturally, and that often cannot develop in the comfort of our figurative nests. That sometimes we have to go through difficult times. So many of these times are simply God's way of preparing us. But remember, and I'm speaking specifically to moms, we are not called to success, however you define that. Bob and I had the privilege of ordaining a young pastor in Wichita this last week. He's a good man and a young man, and I was the youngest one on the ordination council of 8. Made me feel good. The reality is there are fewer and fewer young men going into the ministry. And we grilled the guy for a while, and a lot of his members, even his grandmother, came up to me and said, "Thank you for asking him the tough questions." And I smiled at one couple who thanked me, and I said, "Well, your pastor's going to make you sweat for a long time, so I thought you'd enjoy watching him sweat a little bit." But the father came up to me, and we were talking. He's got 9 kids. And I said, "You must be so proud of your children." And he said, "I am proud of all of my children, but several of them are away from the Lord." And we talked for just a moment, and every eagles worry is if only one of 8 eagles survive, have I done my job? Have I equipped them? Are they ready to face the realities out there? And every mother and father, Christian mother and father, has the same concern. There are a lot of spiritual predators out there. There are a lot of deception and deceit and philosophies that are going to attack our children when they get out from under our wings, and are even attacking our kids in the nests because we bring them into our home through a bunch of ways. But remember, we are called to do our job, do the best we can, to be faithful. I told this man and his mother, who was part of the conversation, I said, you know, God has trouble with some of his kids too, yes? Is God not faithful? All we can do is do the best that we can, trusting God to do what we cannot. But because of this, we're not called to succeed. We cannot follow our little eagles the rest of their life and make sure everything's taken care of, and that's a tendency, yes? But if we do that, we are not doing what God called us to do. We want to be there to support them, to watch them from a distance, to come in and help encourage in areas and remind them of our training, but we can't parent them forever. We can't protect them forever. We can't be their God forever. It's God's job. But our failures do not need to be final. And faith doesn't grow through comfort, but through crisis, as I talked to you about. Like the mother and the father eagle, when that eagle first learns to take off and flop, God is watching. He's waiting just beyond our obedience. You see, what is the mom or dad going to do if the eagle just simply refuses to get out of the nest? I guess you could drag them, but now they're about the same size. Have you noticed that it's not long before teenage boys outgrow mom? And have you watched my family? Not long before teenage boys outgrow dad. Physically, there's not much we could do at a certain stage. Don't think I haven't wanted to spank my sons that are bigger than me, because I have. But at that stage, that's probably not going to help. What I'm telling you is we have a brief window. The window should never close where we can influence our children, but there is a very brief window in which we can control them. I think it's about 2 days. God is watching and waiting just beyond our obedience to bless us and to take us to the next phase. I shows this picture. It's not an eagle. Sometimes don't we just want to kick him out? I'm done with you. I saw a bumper sticker not long ago. You're 13, you got life all figured out. Go out and get a job, take care of yourself. Any parent ever think that before? Parenting is an exhausting job. It is easy to get disappointed and discouraged. Looking before the nest is full, you look and you say, have I done my best to prepare it? But you know, what happens when the nest is empty? Finish this phrase. What's a mother to do but pray? Worry is what I remember. Worry, which ought to lead us to pray. It is easy looking forward to the brood, wondering, will they ever get it? It is easy looking back, wondering, oh my goodness, did I do a good enough job? I want to close the way I opened. They that wait upon the Lord. Remember, strength and honor. Who can find a virtuous woman, a strong woman? Strength and honor her clothing. Where she go shopping for those? They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. The word wait, kaval, it means not hang out and do nothing. This is where the prayer comes in, Elizabeth. It means literally bind together. What are we binding together when we're waiting? We're binding our heart, our soul, our mind together with God's will, doing the best we can to accomplish His purposes through us. Moms, at whatever stage, grandmothers, you know, there's 10 commandments, right? In Exodus 20, there's only one commandment that has a promise. Do you know what commandment that is? It happens to be the first. There were two tables, right? The first table had the first 4 commandments, which deal with our relationship with God. The second commandment deals with the last 6 commandments that deal with our relationship with one another. The first commandment on the second tablet is, thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother, that it may be well with thee, that thou mayest live long on the earth which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Why does God say that? Because He says, I'm partnering with your mother and your father in preparing you for your future. And if you kick back at them, now we're flawed people, yes? Do you ever wonder why God uses flawed people? Does that ever occur to you? Flawed parents, flawed pastor, flawed partner. Why did God do that? Because He can't find any other kind. And still God says, honor thy father and thy mother. The word honor in the Greek, when this is re-quoted in Ephesians, children, obey your parents in the Lord, honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with the promise, that it may be well with thee. It's the Greek word time. Time is how you pronounce it, but it's spelled time. And it literally means weight. Because money was valued in weight. What's the weight of gold? What's the weight of silver? And honor means you give weight to your parents, their counsel, their prayers, their perspective. Wait upon the Lord. I want to close with a mother's prayer that I read this last week. A mother's perspective. Because remember, mothers are natural nurturers, so they want to make things comfortable for their kids. Had I been Joseph's mother, I would have prayed for protection from his brothers. God, keep him safe. He's so young. He's so different from the others. Mercifully, she never knew there would be slavery in prison too. All she saw is the bullying. Had I been Moses' mother, I'd have wept to keep my little son, praying that she might forget the babe that she had drawn from the water of the Nile. Had I not kept him for her, nursing him the while, was he not mine, and she was just Pharaoh's daughter? God, that's not what I want. Had I been Daniel's mother, I should have pled, give victory, this Babylonian horde, godless and cruel. Don't let him be a captive. Remember, Daniel was the first one carried away. I'd rather he be dead, Almighty Lord, than a slave. Had I been Daniel's mother. Had I been Mary, oh, had I been she, I would have cried as never mother cried. Anything, oh God, anything but crucified. With such prayers importunate, my finite wisdom would assail infinite wisdom. God, I know what's best for my child. God, how fortunate that infinite wisdom should prevail. What is this about? This is about infinite God using finite moms and dads to try to prepare children for when they take off and face the dangers that are out there, and us sometimes as parents questioning God, why didn't you protect them from that? Let's pray. God, you know every heart, you know every mom, you know every dad, you know every son and daughter. You know every grandmother or grandfather. You know every tear that we've cried, every prayer that we've said, every passionate, angry outburst that we've dealt with or we exploded ourselves. Lord, there's not a thing about us that you don't know. And it amazes me that you still love us, that you still find value in us, and that you're not through with us. And that you still want to use us at whatever stage of life we are to instruct, to encourage, to model. As the eagle stirreth up the nest, fluttereth over young, beareth them upon her wings, so the Lord did lead his people. So God, help us to learn to follow you. Help us to learn to honor those that you use to prepare us. And Lord, help us to let you use us at any stage of our lives to prepare others. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.